Walz, who, just when you think no one's sitting at this table, neither she nor the big white blanket, can embarrass themselves any further, he does. She asks him, to her credit, about the carrying the weapons in war, which we know is a lie. He never served in war. He's been stealing valor for quite some time.
Tim Walz has long hidden behind the mask of Minnesota nice, all handshakes, smiles, and folksy charm. But when Megyn Kelly zeroes in, the facade cracks fast. She peels back the grin to expose a politician built on contradictions, blunders, and raw opportunism. Kelly doesn't just dent Walz's image, she burns it down, leaving his so-called legacy trembling like a house of cards in the wind.
Media tour and trying to help her when he's not defending his comments on the Electoral College. And he sits down with Michael Strahan, who's the best thing ABC has going. And Strahan actually asks him about his many, many lies. There's a much longer list than actually came up, but he did raise it to his credit. Here's
Tim Walz has spent years polishing the image of a corn-fed Midwestern everyman, the genial governor who smiles wide, swaps stories about high school football, and shows up to a potluck with a casserole in hand. That Minnesota nice brand has carried him far, casting him as approachable and harmless. But when Megyn Kelly turns her attention his way, the act unravels. She cuts through the charm to expose a politician less about principle and more about playing every angle. The friendly grin can't hide the contradictions. And Kelly doesn't just call him out. She dismantles the facade piece by piece, until the fence walls straddled so carefully lie splintered on the ground.
Weapons in war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about our children being shot in school.
Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. It really helps the channel grow. Now, Megyn Kelly doesn't just chuckle at Tim Walz's contradictions, she drags them into the spotlight like a raccoon caught in the backyard floodlight. Walz has spent years selling himself as the steady Midwestern hand, the guy you can trust to keep things calm. But the reality looks more like a politician juggling promises, telling one story to one crowd and whispering a different one to another. And Kelly isn't fooled by the Minnesota nice mask. To her, Walz isn't a leader at all. He's beige wallpaper, bland, forgettable, and harmless looking, until you step back and realize just how badly it clashes with everything around.
Statements that just aren't true. And the comment about weapons of war that I carried in war, which you didn't. You said that you were in Hong Kong during the Tiananmen Square massacre when you weren't. You kind of chalked it all up to bad grammar or getting the dates wrong. Yeah. But your opponents say you lied to make yourself look better. Do they have a point?
Well, look, 35 years ago, got the opportunity to be in Hong Kong, be in China, learned a lot about it, served 24 years in the National Guard, passionately, in an instance, talking about gun violence in school.
The flaw in Walz's leadership is that it runs on denial, acting like problems don't exist until they slam straight into him. Rising crime. He shrugs and serves up a vague line about community values. Schools in crisis. He pops into a classroom for a photo op, smiling as if one grin could solve the mess. Then he disappears. The problems remain. The results never show. It's leadership as fleeting as a Minnesota summer gone before you've even settled into it. And Megyn Kelly tears right through the act, pointing out that Walz hasn't learned how to govern. He's only learned how to pose next to chaos and call it leadership.
Fallout continues for Tim Walz on the disastrous performance he delivered, in particular when it comes to his self-described knuckle-headed behavior, which was just his latest in a series of lies. The reason he resorted to, "I'm a knucklehead," was he got confronted with his latest lie.
What Megyn Kelly dismantles isn't just Walz's lack of substance, it's the contradictions that practically expose themselves. He parades as the champion of small-town values, but his policies feel stamped out by big city bureaucrats. One day he's preaching freedom and responsibility. The next he's applauding government overreach so long as it props up his allies. Kelly draws the through line. Walz isn't leading, he's camouflaging, a political chameleon, changing colors to match the crowd. never standing still long enough to reveal who he really is.
They know where my heart is, and again, my record has been out there for over 40 years to speak for itself.
And the idea that you said that you were in war, did you misspeak as the campaign has said?
Yeah, I said we were talking about, in this case, this was after a school shooting, the ideas of carrying these weapons of war. And my wife, the English teacher, told me my grammar is not always correct. But again, if it's not this, it's an attack on my children for showing love for me, or it's an attack on...
Took chutzpah. Let's go through it. You said you carried weapons in war, but you've never deployed in a war zone. A campaign official of yours said you misspoke. Did you? Well, I'm proud, incredibly proud of my...
What really fuels Kelly's roast is her focus on Walz's crisis management. The pandemic turned his governorship into a stress test, and the cracks showed fast. One day, he played the stern guardian of public safety, dishing out mandates like Halloween candy. The next, he stumbled through mixed messages that left Minnesotans more baffled than reassured. Kelly's point is simple. Calm isn't competence, it just means he didn't lose his cool on camera. Off camera, his leadership looked more like a garage sale in the rain. Messy, unplanned, and constantly shifting. Rules changed by the day, priorities flipped overnight. And his explanations sounded less like decisions and more like excuses for homework that was never finished. Minnesotans weren't getting leadership. They were getting chaos wrapped in a friendly accent.
There's a long list of them. This one was that he was in China when the Tiananmen Square disaster unfolded, when hundreds of people were killed. You know whether you were in a place where hundreds of people are being massacred by their government when it happens. But he continues to try to say, like, oh, gee, I was just kind of confused. You know, that happened in May and I was there in August, but I guess I just imagined that I was there, whatever. So he got asked about that debate moment where he completely melted.
Walz's record on policing and public safety is where his contradictions come crashing down. He talks tough for the cameras, promising support for law enforcement, but the moment progressive activists push back, he folds like a paper plate at a barbecue. Kelly points out that his so-called leadership during unrest wasn't leadership at all, it was political duck and cover. He let chaos simmer, mistaking passivity for understanding. But understanding doesn't stop riots, and empathy doesn't restore order. In trying to appease everyone, Walz ended up angering everyone. Kelly sharpens the roast with a brutal comparison. His governing style is like a Minnesota winterlong, bleak, and always promising spring is just around the corner, yet spring never comes when it's needed. She also dismantles the myth that Walz is relatable. Sure, he recycles stories about rural Nebraska roots or his days as a high school teacher. But those anecdotes can't hide what he's become. A polished career politician. His everyman persona isn't authenticity, it's political cospla.
This moment by Tim Walz to that because he looked so inept and like a faker. Like he didn't belong there and he was trying to convince us of something that wasn't real as he decided to go pheasant hunting. And Charlie, you're a gun guy. You tell me whether this looked authentic to you. Here he is.
That's my theory.
And it never fits quite right.
Never fits quite right. It's not quite right. How do you give it back?
Governor, what kind of gun is it?
This is a Beretta A400.
Kelly tears apart the notion that Walz is still one of us. The reality, he's been trapped in a political bubble so long that the only small town he knows exists in campaign speeches written by consultants. She also drills into his economic record. Walz tries to pitch his fiscal policies as steady stewardship, but Minnesota under his watch feels like a taxpayer endurance test. High taxes, check bloated budgets, double check, and somehow, essential services still lag. It's like buying every kitchen gadget in the store and still failing to cook a meal. With his eyes on bigger stages, Kelly doesn't just chuckle, she obliterates the fantasy. If he can't manage one state without contradictions, confusion, and mixed messages, what chance does he have nationally? It's the guy who can't run a lemonade stand, suddenly claiming he's ready to take over. Ambition without competence is delusion, and Kelly exposes Walz as a man who mistakes photo ops for leadership and applause for results.
Equally proud of my service in the classroom. Did I mention I was a teacher and a coach, an assistant coach? Okay, whatever. But he's more stolen valor. In the classroom, I'm in the classroom. My record speaks for itself. It doesn't actually. You've put a lot of lies into that record that you've been called out on by service personnel. You must clarify, as your campaign had tried to do, and now you appear to be distancing yourself from that clarification. And then here's two pieces of this that are really... I speak like they do. People are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do. I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on my sleeves, and I speak especially passionately about, and then he goes on to blame it on the school shootings. I guess he was upset about school shootings, so he lied. But stop saying you speak.
Tearing apart the myth of Walz as a unifier, his defenders claim he brings people together, but she flips that story. The only unity he inspires is eye rolls across the political spectrum. Democrats see him as too cautious, Republicans as too reckless, and independents as someone incapable of making a decisive move even when it matters most. The unifier label isn't earned, it's ironic. Walz has united people all right, but in disappointment. And in today's political climate, mediocrity isn't just forgettable, dangerous. Leaders who coast on charm and dodge tough choices leave everyone else to pick up the pieces. Kelly reduces the Minnesota nice facade to rubble. Walz isn't the calm, steady hand his supporters claim he's far less. Reassuring
environment. And Vice President Harris said that she told you to be a little bit more careful on how you say things.
Well, I did it, even the other day of just speaking passionately about these gun violence situations and meeting with these survivors. I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and I do think in these positions, whether it be governor or being vice president of the United States, you do need to be careful. You do need to be a little more thoughtful on it.
Okay, guys, I will submit to you that the American people are not dumb. And I would submit to you that the American people will look over "I'm friends with school shooters," which he said in that vice presidential debate as him misspeaking. Everyone will give him that grace. But it's not going to work on this litany of other lies, because you don't misspeak.
Walz is a politician whose main talent is surviving criticism by looking pleasant while failing upward, and Kelly exposes it with brutal clarity. Behind every forced grin and soft-spoken answer lies a career defined not by vision, but by avoidance. He may have thought his smile was armor, but Kelly turns it into a target and doesn't miss. His strategy relies on the public forgetting, moving on, or not caring enough to dig into the details. He counts on politics' short attention span, assuming that enough folksy slogans and steady grins will earn him the benefit of the doubt. For all his speeches about accountability and transparency, his administration has earned a reputation for dodging scrutiny, tough questions. Answers get buried in bureaucracy, drowned in talking points, or kicked down the road until no one asks anymore. Kelly calls it what it is, not leadership, but a shell game designed to make incompetence look like strategy. It's the political equivalent of painting over water damage with fresh white paint, hoping no one notices the cracks spreading underneath.
Wednesday in Pennsylvania, and here's how he handled it.
I have my dates wrong. I was in Hong Kong and China in 1989. That move from Hong Kong into China, it was profound for me. That was the summer of democracy. I said it's where I understood how sacred democracy was. It's what encouraged me, about 15 back and forth with my students, taking them to China. I speak like everybody else speaks. I need to be clear, I will tell you that, but here's my whole point on that thing with China. I do understand China a hell of a lot better than Donald Trump. Kamala Harris.
And those cracks keep widening. On education, Walz has styled himself as the champion of Minnesota's future, but the test scores tell another story. Reading and math proficiency are falling, classrooms are struggling, and his so-called solutions often boil down to tossing more money at the system without demanding accountability or measurable results. Kelly hones in on the hypocrisy, promising opportunity for every child while delivering a status quo that leaves parents frustrated, teachers burned out, and students falling behind national standards. Walz can wave the banner of equity all day, but equity without results is just expensive window dressing. The economy, his supposed strong suit, tells a similar tale. He talks like he's creating opportunity, but for many Minnesotans, it feels like treading water while being taxed into exhaustion. Kelly slices through the contradiction, showing that Walz mistakes optics for outcomes.
There. Proud of the service that I've done, proud to be a teacher in that classroom, proud to have been very public all these years and owning it when I, said, look, I was there in August of '89. And I think the policies, whether it be dealing with China and understanding China's human rights record, what you can be certain there is that Kamala Harris and I aren't going to, pick dictators on speed dial.
Well, but it's one of the things with trust. So there are going to be some people who say, we can't trust him to even tell the truth about himself.
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
Well, like I said, they know who I am. I know who I am. I know the work that I've done. I know that things get spun.
Kelly delivers some of her harshest blows when exposing Walz's habit of following rather than leading. He has perfected the art of waiting, to see which way the political wind blows, then stepping in front of it and calling it courage. During the George Floyd protests, Walz struggled for weeks to project control torn between activists demanding sweeping change and citizens pleading for safety, rather than making decisive moves.